They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But in the pages of history, revenge is rarely just cold. Sometimes it is a burning fire that consumes entire empires. Sometimes it is a patient, 10-year stalk through a war-torn country. And sometimes it is gruesome beyond comprehension. When justice fails, when the law turns a blind eye, the human heart turns to something darker. We are not talking about simple grudges today. We are talking about the kind of vengeance that topples warlords, halts the most terrifying army the world has ever known, and forces an entire kingdom to bow before a rotting corpse. Welcome to the Time Survey. Today, we are opening the archives on 3 of the most extreme, violent, and calculated revenge stories ever recorded. From the medieval courts of Portugal to the chaotic warlord era of China, and finally to the blood-soaked sands of the Middle East. These are the people who didn't just get even, they changed history. Let's turn back the clock. Our first descent into madness takes us to the Kingdom of Portugal in the year 1340. The political landscape of the Iberian Peninsula is fragile. Portugal is a small kingdom, living in the shadow of its massive neighbor Castile. King Afonso IV knows that one wrong move could see his kingdom swallowed up. To secure his borders, he negotiates a political marriage. His son, the young Prince Peter, is to marry Constanza Manuel, a noblewoman of Castile. It is a marriage of ink and wax designed for safety, not love. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. When the royal procession arrives from Castile, Prince Peter waits to meet his bride. The carriage doors open, and a woman steps out. She is breathtaking. Her elegance is undeniable, her beauty striking enough to silence the court. Peter's heart hammers against his ribs. He falls in love in a single heartbeat. But the universe is playing a trick on him. The woman he is staring at is not his bride. She is Inés de Castro, the lady-in-waiting to his future wife. When the actual bride, Constanza, finally steps out, Peter is already lost. He goes through with the wedding, fulfilling his duty to the crown, but his soul belongs to Inés. What follows is a tragedy that rivals Romeo and Juliet, though with a much bloodier ending. Peter and Inés begin a passionate, illicit affair. It is the worst-kept secret in the kingdom. While Peter's legal wife Constanza suffers in a loveless marriage, the prince and the lady-in-waiting are inseparable. The court whispers. The king worries. Inés is not just a pretty face, she has brothers, powerful Castilian exiles. King Afonso becomes paranoid. He fears that this affair isn't just a scandal, it's a political Trojan horse. He fears Inés will manipulate Peter, dragging Portugal into a war with Castile to restore her brother's power. In 1345, Constanza dies in childbirth. The obstacle is gone. Peter is ecstatic. He is finally free to marry the love of his life. But his father, King Afonso, forbids it. He banishes Inés from the court, sending her away to keep her claws off his son. But Peter, defiant and love-struck, ignores his father's commands. He finds Inés and they live together in Coimbra, raising 4 children in a happy, illegitimate bliss. For 10 years, they live in peace. But King Afonso's patience runs out. His advisors whisper poison in his ear. They ask, "What happens when you die?" Peter will marry her. Her children will challenge the true heir. Civil war will destroy Portugal. The king makes a decision that will doom his soul. In 1355, while Peter is away on a hunting trip, Afonso sends 3 assassins to Coimbra. They find Inés in the monastery of Santa Clara. She is there with her children. Legend says she pleaded for her life, holding her babies up to the king's men, begging for mercy. There was no mercy that day. In front of her screaming children, the assassins decapitated the love of Peter's life. When Peter returns to find the blood of his beloved stained on the monastery floor, something inside him snaps. The prince dies, and a monster is born. Consumed by a grief that instantly turns into a black rage, Peter declares war on his own father. He raises an army and ravages northern Portugal. He burns villages. He slaughters anyone in his path. It is a war of pure spite. It only ends when his mother, the queen, begs for a truce. But Peter never forgives. 2 years later, the old king dies. Peter becomes Peter I, King of Portugal. And his first act as king is the stuff of nightmares. He hunts down the assassins. 2 of them are captured and dragged to the royal palace in 1361. Peter does not give them a quick death. He wants them to feel the void they created in his chest. In a public spectacle, Peter orders their execution. The executioner takes a knife and rips their hearts out of their chests while they are still alive, one through the back, one through the front. Peter watches, stone-faced, declaring, "You stole my heart, so I will take yours." But he isn't finished. Revenge is not enough. He needs validation. In a ceremony that blurs the line between romance and horror, Peter orders the body of Inés de Castro to be exhumed from her grave. She has been dead for years. Her body is decomposing. But Peter has her dressed in the finest royal robes. He places a crown upon her decaying head and sits her on the throne beside him. He forces the entire nobility of Portugal, the men who whispered against her, the courtiers who shunned her, to form a line. One by one, they are forced to bow before the corpse queen and kiss her rotting hand, swearing allegiance to her. Peter eventually ordered a magnificent marble tomb for her at the monastery of Alcobaça. He ordered his own tomb to be placed directly opposite hers. Why? So that on the day of judgment, when the dead rise, the very first thing he will see when he opens his eyes is her. We leave the marble tombs of Portugal and travel forward to the 1920s, to a China engulfed in flames. The Qing dynasty has fallen. The emperor has abdicated. China has shattered into fragments, ruled by ruthless warlords who tear the country apart for power. This is the Warlord era, a time where might makes right and life is cheap. In this chaos, we meet Shi Jianqiao. She is a young woman, a university student living a life of relative privilege. Her father, Shi Kongbin, is a respected general serving the Fengtian clique. But in the shifting sands of Chinese warfare, alliances are fragile. In 1925, a war erupts between rival factions. Shi Kongbin leads a brigade to capture a key territory, but he is outmaneuvered. The opposing warlord, a brutal man named Sun Chuanfang, known as the Warlord of 5 provinces, captures him. Now, usually, there are rules to war. Prisoners of high rank are treated with some dignity. But Sun Chuanfang is a cruel man. He wants to send a message. He orders Shi Kongbin to be decapitated. But he doesn't stop there. He mounts the general's head on a pike at the local train station, leaving it there to rot as a warning to his enemies. News reaches the young Shi Jianqiao. The grief is overwhelming, but the dishonor is unbearable. In Chinese culture, filial piety, the respect for one's parents, is paramount. To have her father killed is one thing. To have his remains desecrated is a stain on her soul that cannot be washed away with tears. It requires blood. She is a 20-year-old student. Her enemy is one of the most powerful men in China, commanding armies of thousands. The odds are impossible. But Shi Jianqiao makes a vow. She changes her name. Jianqiao translates to sword raising. She is no longer a student, she is a weapon. She undergoes surgery to unbind her feet, a painful process necessary to allow her to move freely, to run, to hunt. She practices her marksmanship, and she waits. Years pass. The political winds in China shift. The Nationalist Party, the Kuomintang, rises up and sweeps across the country, defeating the warlords one by one. Sun Chuanfang, the man who murdered her father, loses his army. He loses his power. Stripped of his titles, he retires to the city of Tianjin. In a twist of irony, the former butcher becomes a devout Buddhist. He spends his days in prayer, leading a lay Buddhist society, claiming to have left his violent past behind. He thinks he is safe. He thinks the world has forgotten. But the sword-raising daughter has not forgotten. For 10 years, she tracks him. She discovers his location in Tianjin. She learns his routine. She knows he goes to the Buddhist temple on Failing Nan Road to recite sutras. November 13th, 1935. A cold, gray day. Shi Jianqiao enters the temple. The air is thick with the smell of incense and the low hum of chanting. She blends in with the worshippers. She moves closer to the front. And there he is. Sun Chuanfang, the man who put her father's head on a spike. He is kneeling, eyes closed, lost in prayer. She walks up behind him. She draws a Browning semi-automatic pistol. She doesn't hesitate. She fires point blank into the back of his head. He collapses. She fires 2 more times into his back to ensure the deed is done. Panic erupts in the temple. Monks and worshippers scream and scatter. But Shi Jianqiao does not run. She does not hide. She stands over the body of the warlord. She reaches into her coat and pulls out a handful of pamphlets she had printed beforehand. She scatters them over the dead body. They read, "I have avenged my father. I will not flee. I will surrender to the authorities to face judgment." When the police arrive, she is waiting for them calm and composed. The trial that followed captivated the entire nation of China. It was a clash of civilizations. On one side, the modern rule of law, which said murder is a crime. On the other side, the ancient Confucian code, which said avenging a father is the highest moral duty a child can perform. Public sympathy was overwhelmingly on her side. She wasn't seen as a killer, she was a hero. In the end, under immense public pressure, the government pardoned her. She walked free. She had faced a titan, waited 10 years, and struck him down in his holy sanctuary. Shi Jianqiao lived out the rest of her life in peace, dying in 1979, the woman who proved that a daughter's memory is longer than a warlord's army. Our final story is perhaps the most consequential revenge story in human history. This isn't just about one man avenging another. This is about a man avenging a civilization. The year is 1231. The Khwarezmian Empire, a vast Islamic state in Persia, is burning. The Mongols have arrived. Under Genghis Khan and later his successors, the Mongol Horde is an unstoppable force of nature. They don't just conquer, they obliterate. They killed millions. Cities that had stood for centuries were wiped from the map in days. Amidst this apocalypse, a young prince of the Khwarezmian royal family is captured. His family is dead. His kingdom is ash. He is stripped of his royal name and sold into slavery. He is bought by a slave merchant and taken to Egypt, far from his home. The boy is purchased by the Sultan of Egypt and placed into the Mamluk Corps. The Mamluks were a unique class of warrior slaves. Stolen as boys, they were trained with brutal intensity to become the deadliest knights in the Islamic world. The young prince is given a new name, Qutuz. It means the rabid dog. He grows up with a singular fire in his belly. He remembers the smoke. He remembers the screams of his people. He rises through the ranks, his skill in battle undeniable, eventually becoming the Sultan of Egypt himself. But the past is not done with him. In 1258, the Mongols, now led by Hulagu Khan, sack Baghdad. They destroy the House of Wisdom. They roll the caliph in a carpet and trample him to death with horses. The river Tigris runs black with ink from books and red with the blood of scholars. The Mongols turn their eyes toward Egypt. Hulagu sends messengers to Cairo. They bring a letter to Qutuz. It is one of the most terrifying documents in history. It reads, "We have conquered vast areas, massacring all the people. You cannot escape from the terror of our armies. Where can you flee? Our horses are swift, our arrows sharp, our hearts as hard as mountains. The advisors of Egypt tremble. No one has ever stopped the Mongols. They suggest surrender." But Qutuz looks at them with eyes that have seen the end of the world before. He tells them, "I will not hand over this land to the butchers of my family." Qutuz takes the Mongol envoys, diplomats who are usually considered untouchable, and slices them in half at the waist. He hangs their heads on the gates of Cairo. It is a declaration of total war. He rallies his army. He joins forces with another Mamluk general, Baibars, a man who was also sold into slavery by the Mongols. Together, these two former slaves march out to meet the masters of the world. They meet at a place called Ain Jalut, the spring of Goliath. The Mongol army is terrifying, but Qutuz has a plan. He knows the Mongols rely on feigned retreats, pretending to run away to lure enemies into a trap. So, the Mamluks decide to use the Mongols' own trick against them. Baibars leads the vanguard. He attacks the Mongols and then runs away. The Mongols, arrogant and used to easy victories, chase him. They ride deeper and deeper into the valley, thinking the Egyptians are cowards. Suddenly, the trap is sprung. Qutuz signals. The main Mamluk army, hiding in the hills, descends like an avalanche. The battle is chaotic. The Mongols are ferocious. They fight like demons, and the Mamluk left wing begins to crumble. Panic sets in. If the line breaks, Egypt falls, and the road to North Africa and Europe is open to the Horde. Seeing his men waver, Sultan Qutuz does the unthinkable. He throws his helmet to the ground so his men can see his face. He draws his sword and charges alone into the center of the Mongol line, screaming, "O Islam, O God, grant your servant Qutuz victory." Seeing their sultan ride to his death, the Mamluks find a surge of courage. They charge after him. For the first time in history, the Mongol army breaks. They are surrounded and slaughtered. The general Kitbuka is captured and executed. Qutuz, the boy who was sold into slavery, the prince who lost everything, had done the impossible. He had stopped the unstoppable. He halted the Mongol expansion into the Muslim world and Europe forever. The victory at Ain Jalut is legendary. But revenge, as we know, is a double-edged sword. As the victorious army marches back to Cairo, a conspiracy brews. Baibars, the general who fought alongside Qutuz, wants the throne. He feels he deserves the glory. In a final twist of betrayal, Baibars and a group of conspirators assassinate Qutuz on the journey home. Qutuz ruled for less than a year. He saved the world, avenged his people, and was murdered by his own brother-in-arms. A tragic end for the rabid dog. But his vengeance against the Mongols remains one of the greatest military turnarounds in human history. From the corpse queen of Portugal to the assassin of the warlord to the slave who shattered the Mongol myth. These stories remind us that the line between justice and vengeance is often blurred by blood. History is written by the victors, they say, but sometimes it is written by the vengeful. Which of these stories do you think was the most justified? Would you have waited 10 years like Shi Jianchao, or would you have gone to the extremes of King Peter? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this descent into the darker side of history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Time Survey. We have many more files to open. Until next time, watch your back.